So we kind of went through and did some introductions. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. So I've been in the sign and graphic industry for 25 years. My family bought a sign shop 27 years ago, and we had Flexi on a Mac at that time and a Graphtec FC 5100 cutter. So we would cut vinyl and stick it on banners, vehicles, and everything. Digital printers weren't quite what they are back then now, so Flexi worked really great for us. And then we sold that shop, and I came to work for Regional. I was their only tech for like 8 or 10 years, and then I kind of managed that department for a couple of years, and then went to work for Flexi. So I've worked for Flexi Software for 7 years now. I'm on the sales side of it, so I always tell people I know enough tech and whatnot to get myself in trouble more times than not. So a cool thing about Flexi is that everybody uses it differently. So when I show you one way to do things, oftentimes I find in these classes that somebody else does it differently, and they both get the same end result. And one isn't always better than the other, but it's pretty interesting to see how people use different things within Flexi. So that's a little bit about me and these classes. So what I'll do basically is we'll kind of go over Flexi, and where I'm on the sales side, I have to go over Flexi 22 a little bit and kind of show you some things in there, and then we'll get into the fun part of designing. And then how many people are staying for the afternoon class? Okay, so so the morning class is more kind of design side of Flexi, and then the afternoon's production manager. So we get into nesting and some different things in there. Color management, which is a fun topic. We've got like a couple hours, and really color management you can spend days talking about. So so that'll be kind of fun. So we'll jump into it here. How many, do you guys know what version of Flexi you have? Is anybody on the latest version on Flexi 22? Okay. Oh, yeah, if you've got an 800, then you guys are on 22. So there's a couple of you in here that have the traffic version, which is cool. So we'll jump in and kind of show you some things on there, which are relative kind of the same thing when we get into color palettes and things down here. So we'll go over that. So we'll kind of jump in here with, we'll start out with kind of the Flexi workspace. This hasn't changed in a number of years. There's a couple cool things that a lot of people don't know. How many of you use Illustrator and CorelDRAW and Flexi kind of in conjunction together? So one thing that's kind of cool about Flexi is you can actually change your workspace. If you go to File and Workspace, you can actually change this to like Adobe, and it changes your icons and things around to mimic and look like Illustrator or CorelDRAW or Gerber type icons. So that's under File and Workspace. I always go to the Flexi default settings because I know those on there. So that's in there. And then the brains of Flexi is Design Central right here. And you guys probably all know that anything that you do within Flexi changes with Design Central. So if we click on the text tool, that makes all your changes, and then we can work with text there. So it's Flexi is, you think of it as one program, or actually most people think of it as 2 programs. So Flexi is the design side, and then Production Manager is the RIP. So this is what processes the file, tells the printer how to print and everything. So Flexi is kind of 2 programs, but if you really get into the nuts and bolts about it, Flexi is like 1,000 programs all kind of rolled up into one thing. And one thing I always like to show people is, as perfect as I wish our software was, sometimes you get a little glitch or a bug on there. And it's usually like one of those programs, like the text tool or something, has a little bug in it. So if you ever have issues with Flexi where it's doing something kind of funky, if you go to your Start menu and go down to SAI Production Suite, or if you have the traffic version, I think it says Flexi 3 on traffic on there. But if you open up this here and go to Preference Manager, this is pretty cool right here. You can go to Factory Defaults, and if you hit Load, it kind of resets Flexi. If you're working with a printer, if you've ever had an issue with your printer where you power it down, let it sit for like 5 minutes and then restart it, it's kind of like a hard, this is kind of like doing a hard reset on Flexi. So this is pretty, I think this is pretty important to know. The other reason that I wanted to show you this is that you can save preferences here. So say, I know a lot of people like to come in and make the icons, they put different icons up here. So I always like to, if you right click up here where your icons are, you can add any of these kind of shortcuts here. So I always like to add the align tools in here and dock them up here. Oops. I have two monitors and for some reason it always kind of messes up things on here when I try and dock it when I'm just on my laptop. So if I have my align tools and I dock these up here, it's going to take me forever to get it over here. And then I always like to put my bitmap editing toolbar up here as well. So these are our Photoshop type tools, and I'll get into these here in a little bit. Maybe I can get them in there. Okay, now they disappeared on me. So when you customize your work screen like you want it, if you come back in here to that Preference Manager, you can actually save all that in there as well. So if we come here and go to Preference Manager, and I hit Save, I can go in here and I can give this a different name. We'll type in Regional Supply Class. And I hit OK here. That sets all my defaults that I've set on here. So then if you ever have to reload Flexi or do something like that, then you can come back into this Preference Manager and then you can reload everything on there. So it'll put all your icons and everything back. When I was a tech for Regional Supply, sometimes if software is having an issue, you go in and reinstall the software, but then it deletes all your preferences and everything. So I can't tell you how many times I would reset Flexi for somebody and all their icons were moved around. And if you've got OCD like me, it bugs people to no end to have their icons different places. So this is kind of cool. And you can export this as well and save it, which is super nice. So you could, if you have multiple copies of Flexi, you could actually export these preferences and then import them into another version and set up everything the same there. So kind of a cool tool within Flexi a lot of people don't know about. The other thing is if you have Flexi 22, this is what we call our cloud window over here, which has some cool things. You get, I think it's 5 gigs, it might be 10 gigs now of storage where you can store files on our server, which if you're using vehicle graphics, that's maybe like 1 or 2 files. It's not very big. And then we've got some different things here. Our knowledge base is actually pretty cool in our YouTube channel. So these are quick links here. And our YouTube channel is really helpful. We do webinars about once a month, and they're all on our YouTube channel here. So if you come over here and go to videos, there's all sorts of things, different videos in here. These are all en route. We also make en route, which is a CNC software. So if you've got a 4x8 CNC, we make en route, which does all your auto tool paths. It does a lot of cool things. We just released en route 23, so there's a lot of videos there. But you can see there's a lot of Flexi videos as well. So we did one on using Flexi for small desktop UV printers. There's how to control your cut orders. We did some things on color management. There's all sorts of webinars here that you can access on our YouTube channel. And then our knowledge base is pretty cool. Later on, we're going to go over spot color mapping. So if I type in spot color mapping here, it brings up kind of a step-by-step on how to do spot color mapping. This tool is really cool for color management. If you're printing a color and it's not coming out exactly like you want it to be or your customer, we have this tool in here where you can print 64 variations of it and really dial in that color really easily. So that link is pretty cool. So there's great stuff here, but it takes up valuable design space, so I always turn it off. There's a button right here that turns on and off that screen. And then I like to dock my icons over there. Design Central is right up here. So there's kind of three windows that a lot of people use. There's Design Central, then there's our fill stroke editor, and then there is our layer window as well. Right there, kind of hidden on me. We may not go over this one because I don't think anybody has a printer that has white in it. So in Flexi 22 we added some utilities in there for managing layers. So if you're printing and you're putting white under it or something, the layer functionality in Flexi is really cool, but we probably won't go over that here. So that's kind of the basic layout of Flexi, the workspace here. I'm going to go ahead and close these out. And when you first open Flexi, the cool thing about Flexi, we were talking about this earlier with vehicle graphics and stuff, is Flexi designs in full scale. It's not limited like Adobe Illustrator is, so you could actually create something that's 20 feet long. When the Olympics were in Salt Lake, my family had our sign shop. We had a signorama store, and I love telling this story. It's the coolest project we ever did. But when the Olympics came in 2002, prior to that, in like 2000, the Olympic Committee came to us and asked if we could put the Olympic logo on the speed skating oval in Kearns, which was like 100 feet tall and like 200 feet wide. And they wanted us to donate it, so we said, well, we're not going to donate it because that's a lot of labor, it's going to take a lot of time, but if we were to do it, this is what we'd charge you for it. And they came to us in 2001 and had us do it. So we brought in the Olympic logo into Flexi. We scaled it to, I'm probably exaggerating, it probably wasn't 100 feet by 200 feet, but I think it was 100 feet long. And we tiled it in Flexi. I used my GraphTech plotter with a pen, and we made the templates for it. We laid it out on the roof, and then the roofing people had colored membranes, and they cut it to these patterns, so that was pretty cool to do in Flexi. But it shows you how you can scale it to full size in Flexi. And you do that, so when you open up, when you first open a new page in Flexi, it gives you this artboard. And this is for reference only. It doesn't print it, it doesn't cut it or anything. So if you were doing an 18-inch by 24-inch yard sign, you can put that in there, and that's kind of your reference starting point on there. You can change colors if you wanted to. Here you could give it a different background color. It won't print that, so if you ever use a different background color, I always create a box to my background and give that the color that you want to do on there. Because if you do it in Design Central over there, it doesn't keep that color. So that's pretty simple. The other thing that a lot of people don't know about is our color palettes down here. There's a lot of different color palettes within Flexi. Does anybody here still cut colored vinyl, or does everybody print? So you guys are cutting EC film a lot then?
We do both, yeah, depending on the non-reflectives too. So
okay.
It just depends on the job and the amount of work we're doing at the time, if we can handle it or not.
Okay.
It just gives us other avenues as well, and we've used it for years.
Okay. Yeah, so a lot of you are still cutting vinyl. We have a lot of color palettes within Flexi. If you right click on it down here, go to open table and then library here. You could, for example, go down here if you wanted to go to Oracal 651 and you could open up that color palette, which is this color palette right here. And then it's got all those colors, so it makes designing and keeping track of work kind of nice. So if you get in the habit of using the correct color palette if you're cutting vinyl, then you can kind of keep track of what you did on that job. Probably the most popular color palette is the Pantone library. And we'll kind of go over this a little bit later. But if you come into Pantone and solid coded, right there, you can open that color palette. And this is a lot bigger than the 651 color palette. I like to dock it up here, and you can go through and go through your Pantone color palette here. So one difference that you'll see here, it's hard to see on my laptop, but in here, if you see the color swatches here, how they have a little dot in them right there, these are spot colors. If you look at the Oracle color palette and my generic color palette down here, they don't have that little dot in it, so they're not spot colors. We're going to get into, in my second part of the class, like color management between RGB, CMYK, and spot colors. If you are working with a customer who needs to match Pantone 485 red, if you use a spot color, when it goes into the RIP will actually recognize that spot color name, and we have predefined color values for Pantones in the RIP, which work really great. So if you've got an HP printer, they're really good at getting really close to that color, and then we have a tool that I'll get into where you can really tweak that and really match that color. But most people design in RGB, that's kind of the recommended color space to work in. And then you've got CMYK and spot colors. In my second half, I get into all the differences on those. So those color palettes are really helpful. And again, you right click on those, go to open table, and then your library's in here. And I believe for you traffic guys, this comes up fairly often, but sometimes that little color palette disappears, those 7 traffic colors on there. And to get that back, you right click, you go to open table, you'll go into the swatch and then library, and then under 3M, you've got your 3M traffic AMST colors. So you'll open up those, and you'll see that these are spot colors here. These are predefined by 3M and HP so that when you print, it gets the right traffic, green, red, whatever you need to on there. So those are colors, pretty simple there. So then we'll kind of get into the fun stuff of actually creating stuff in Flexi. So hopefully I've got something that you guys learned. Like I said earlier, sometimes I get nervous because sometimes people have used this a lot longer than I have. So hopefully we kind of go through something that maybe you didn't know about here. So the first thing I'm going to go over is text. Any of the icons in Flexi that have this little tick mark in the corner, if you click and hold that down, it opens up more options on there. So text is pretty cool in Flexi. Especially I love showing this to people who use Corel and Illustrator all the time. So in Design Central, when I click that text tool, everything brings up on here. We're going to type in like 2-inch letters here. And we'll type in original supply. So pretty simple, not really a lot to that, but when we get into manipulating the text, this is where Flexi gets pretty cool. So a couple things I could do here. Well, I've still got the text tool going. I could come in here and highlight this and change this to bold on here if I wanted to. I can change anything here, the height of my letters, the percentage of the width of the letter. So if you wanted to scale it down like 80%, it's going to just narrow those letters on there. We can italicize it right here if you wanted to. Pretty easy. That one right there. This is the spacing in between our letters. Sorry, my laptop's small. The older I get, my eyes, I didn't bring my glasses here. So this is your spacing in between letters. And then if you have any vertical offset or anything on there, you can control that. And then you've got your spacing tab here. I can center this text. You can do all sorts of different things in here. But what I like to show with the text tool is if I go to my selection tool here and click on it, it brings up these options. So I can scroll through these tabs right here and make changes. Or I can select it once, it goes to the first tab. If I double click on text, it goes to the second. If I triple click it, it goes to the third. So we'll just go through each of these here. This rotate tab, I can distort my text here. I can grab one of these little nodes on there and I can kind of distort the text however I want to on there. And then you've got different options here. You can rotate it, go kind of the same thing. Instead of grabbing those nodes, you can use these and use actual numeric values on there, or you can rotate stuff. So all sorts of different options of manipulating text there. The fun one that I really like is the third tab here. And this is what kind of sets us a little bit apart from Corel and Illustrator. So if we wanted to manipulate each of these, there's a bunch of different options we can do here. I can grab these nodes right here and I can change my individual kerning with each letter. I can grab these nodes up here and I can rotate each individual letter here. The cool thing about this is this keeps it as text. So if I had spelled this wrong, I should have probably spelled it wrong to begin with, but if I come in here and I spelled something wrong, I can still come in here and delete this. It keeps it as text. So I believe, I haven't worked in Illustrator or Corel in a while, but if you were to do this kind of stuff in those programs, what you would have to do is you'd have to go to text and you'd have to break these apart and then ungroup these.
Yeah, create outlines as well if not just stay in letter text.
Yep, but then once you break it apart and ungroup it, then you can't go back and manipulate the text at all if you want to. So this is a pretty cool functionality of Flexi. So text, that's the text tool there. So like I said, anything that has the little tick mark here, if we click and select that, we've got different text tools. So I've got text on an arc here. So if we're going to make the text a little bit smaller this time. We'll go to 1 inch. So now if I type regional supply, from here if I hit enter, it's going to go to the bottom of the circle. And then I can do text on an arc really easy here. So if I come back to Design Central here, if I wanted to make this a smaller circle, I can come in here then and I can change this radius on here and do what I need to on here. And then these little buttons here, you just kind of always have to play around with. So if I click these, it does different ways of putting them on the circle here. It swaps them there. They'll put them centered on that circle or below it there. So a bunch of different options on there. That's text on an arc. There's another way to do this as well. That's kind of predefined there. Text on a path. This is one of my favorite tools here. So So I'm going to jump ahead and go to this tool right here, which is kind of like my pen drawing tool. So if I use this tool, and if I click two different spots here, I'm holding the shift key, and I can manipulate this arc on here. So then if I shift and hold another arc here, I can do that. If I just click 2 points, it just draws a straight line between it, but if I hold shift down, it brings me up where I can manipulate that arc. So now what we're going to do is we're going to place text on this path here. And I just drew this. You could do this on an oval, a circle, anything you wanted to, but if I go to my text on a path tool here and I select somewhere on this path, I can type roller coaster on here, then I can come back to my text. I'm going to triple click it to bring all my options right here, and then I can actually grab this part and I can manipulate that text anywhere on that path there. And this is where your kerning comes into play, so then I can come in here and I can grab and I can change the kerning on these letters here that all get kind of munched up together. So that tool is really kind of cool. I had our sign shop when a lot of people used to, and I think they still do, like all the letters that are on the walls in here, people would come in and say they wanted to put a saying over an arched wall or something, so you could actually go in and create that arch and then match it to that text on there with that tool. The other tools aren't as exciting on here. You've got text on a vertical path here, so if we use that one, it just types text vertically there. That's the text tool. I think that my favorite part of the text tool is the text and going to that third tab on there and manipulating the text. So kind of on the same lines as that, Flexi has, we call it smart objects. And this one's pretty cool too. For example here, this is a real simple example, but we've got a box, and then we'll put a starburst on here. So again, with my starburst here, if I wanted to manipulate this, I could come in here, I could make this as many points as I wanted on here. I can manipulate how this starburst actually works. So we're going to create kind of a for sale banner or something here. And we want to put this, this starburst over in the corner here. We're going to rotate it maybe just a little like this. And I'm going to put this over here. And I want to weld these together. Under view, I can come in here. I do this fairly often. I can go view and go to wireframe on here. And then I apologize to anybody who uses hotkeys. A lot of people who work with Flexi day in and day out know these hotkeys very well. So you'll see here on show fills, if I hit Control F, I can toggle back and forth between that function there. So what I'm going to do with this is I want to weld this together. And it's super simple. In Flexi, we've got these different options. We can weld, we can knock out all sorts of different things. So I'm just going to weld these together. So we've got that welded together now. And hopefully you guys don't do this. I used to be too nice in my shop. Somebody'd come in and I'd be designing something for them and I'd say, "Ah, come on back and we'll design it on the computer together." See, she's shaking her head over there. Sometimes it's hard to make all this stuff and having somebody over your shoulder, but if we needed to, so they're going to come in here and say, I like the starburst over here, but I really want it down in the bottom left-hand corner. What most people would do is they'd come in here and they would undo this. So you'd come in here maybe do undo or right click on here and you can come in and separate the weld. Do it there. So anyway, you'd go back to where you had two objects on there. Where this is welded on one object, what you can do, we'll go back to view here, is under our selection tool, we've got two arrows here. We've got a selection tool and a select within. If I hit the select within, I can come over here. Oops. You can also right click and go to select within. And I can come over here and select my star. It's not letting me here. You know what? I might have, I think I know what I did. I'm going to redo this here.
I love it when that happens.
I have an idea what I did, and I'll show you here if this works. So I'm going to weld these two together. And then if I go to my selection tool here, there we go. So see how it, if I go to my wireframe and I go to select within, I can hover over the star. Right here. I had it down. Select within. There we go, and select my star. So then I can grab the star, I can move it down here, and it keeps the weld on there. So you don't have to go undo the weld and make that change on there. So that selection within tool is pretty useful. That was a simple example. The other example that I like to show is we're going to come in here and we'll do something more complex. So this is what we call smart objects. So if I come in here, and I'm no graphic artist, so if you guys want to make fun of anything I put up here, color combinations and different things, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to change my text here. I don't know why, but I really like this font for some reason. We're going to make this black, and then we're going to put an outline around it. And hopefully you all know better than putting dark colors together on here, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to put a red outline on here. And we've got some funky little thing going on here. So what you can always do then is if you see if I select this and Design Central, it's got my outline on there. So I'm going to go in here and change my outline. Something in the font that's picking up some strange little note over there. So I've got that then here. So now I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put a drop shadow on it. And the shadow tool is pretty cool. I can grab anywhere here and move this shadow anywhere I wanted to. Or I can make changes over here, and we can do a couple things here. If I wanted to do a more realistic, transparent type shadow, I can do that. If I click on options, I've got my blending mode, opacity, blur, resolution, and everything there. If I hit OK on here, I'm going to change the color. I'm going to make it black and hit OK. A lot of people forget to click the green check mark on Flexi here. If you don't, if I just hit enter or something here, it's not going to apply it. But if I hit that check mark, it gives me a shadow on there. So now in Flexi, I've got two different types of images here. I've got vector and raster images. You guys all know the difference between vector and raster images? So vector is something that is an outline that's filled with color. So this box, if I go to my show fills, I've got a box that's filled with color. My outline and my text are vector, but that drop shadow is a raster image. So raster images are composed of pixels. So when we go to try and outline something, vector's easy because we're just outlining it. Raster not so much because it's pixels and there's not a defined outline to do an outline or a cut line on. But the cool thing about Flexi is we're going to put a cut line around this. So if I select this and go to Effects and Contour Cut, you'll notice it puts it around my raster shadow on here as well. Like Illustrator and Corel, if you have raster images, it's not as easy to outline something there. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But if I hit my check mark on here, then I've got a smart object, we call it here. So it's got text, it's got an outline, it's got a drop shadow, and it's got a contour cut on it. So if I came in here and realized that I spelled this wrong, or I wanted to add something else in here, in Corel and Illustrator, you may have to undo everything, make the change, and then redo all your effects. But if I come to my text tool here, I can come in here to my text, and I could come in here and type something else. Usually I spell it wrong and come back and do that. But if I go back to my text, there we go. So I forgot the end here. So if we type that in there, it applies the outline, the drop shadow, the cut contour, and everything to there. Most of the time you don't forget to put something in there. Most of the time you maybe spelled something wrong or did something, so you're going to go in there and get rid of that. So that's what we call smart objects. It saves everything that you did on there, so it makes changes and doing everything really easy. So again, if we came into the text here, if I right click and go to select within and go to my text here, I could do that triple click on here, and I can still come in here. Sorry, do the rotate. I wanted to rotate these. It keeps all my stuff that I did on there, so then I can change this kerning. So it's nice because you don't have to undo everything you did on there. It makes designing super easy, especially if you've got clients who are picky and you send them one proof and they want to change this, and then they don't like that, so they want to change it, and you end up making 3 or 4 different edits on there.
Is there a way to save this over to an Illustrator file? Because I've only ever saved from Illustrator to Flexi. Is there a way to transfer all this information to Illustrator?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could come in here and you just go to File and Export, and then you can save this as a PDF, an EPS, an AI file, and then you can bring that over to there. The hard part when we're talking about text is if you go back and forth between programs, a lot of times you lose that editing capability on there.
You won't be able to do all the custom little editings for once you switch it over, because the PDF will change the format.
Correct. So that brings up kind of a good point too. Flexi recognizes fonts that are installed on your computer. So if you go out and buy TrueType fonts or anything, all you have to do is install those within the fonts folder on your computer, and it'll automatically load into Flexi. So if I went in now, if I was designing and had Flexi open, and I went out and found a font to match a customer's font, you could download that, put it in your fonts folder. You'll actually get a message in Flexi that says there's a new font available. Do you want to update? You hit OK, and it'll load it into Flexi so that it's available up here. So those are smart text. Some other things that we can do in Flexi are we can work with Braille, barcodes, QR codes. Do you guys ever work with any of those? So, yeah, QR codes. So but it's really easy in Flexi. So if we needed to do something in Braille, so like if we did a sign, we were doing signs for a hotel room, and we needed to add Braille on there. We can come in here, I'm going to make the text black. And under text here, we've got Braille, our barcodes, QR codes, and I still haven't figured out 100% what data matrix codes are, but I know they're out there. We convert them. So Braille is really easy. You go to Braille, text to Braille, and it converts it to Braille for you. This application is becoming really popular. There's a lot of flatbed printers out there. Roland makes one, Mamaki, Muto have these small desktop UV printers. And you can actually take this Braille here right there then, and you can print multiple layers on these printers. So UV printers are really cool because inkjets have liquid ink that they put down and then the dot spreads and it's flat on there. But UV printers, as they print, as that ink jets down, it actually, there's a light behind it on the carriage that dries that ink instantly. So it's actually, instead of dropping on the material and then spreading out, it's actually like domed and it keeps that texture. With these printers, you can actually print like 16 layers and actually print Braille like this. So it's kind of cool. Throw that out there. None of you guys have a UV printer, do you? There's a lot of things we could get into there, but we won't do that. So the other things that you can do on here, you can go to our webs. You can type in a website here. This happens to be Flexi's website. And you can come over to your text and we could create a QR code here. So if we go QR code, text to QR code, it creates a QR code, and then if you click on the tab here, there's all sorts of different options that you can select on here. So this was a web URL, so we would want to change that there. And then there's different options here. I'm not exactly sure what all these are. Context, hint, these all have to do with the actual barcode itself. You can see it changes it there. So you've got all these different options on there. So you can create QR codes, barcodes. So the other thing is barcodes. So if we were regional supply here, and if we wanted to label all the racks out there, you can create barcodes very easily. Just come in here, we've got barcode, the different options of barcode, and it converts it to your barcode for you. And then again, you've got all your different options on here. If I zoom into this, all my options have to do with spacing. So you'll see here, if I change this, it changes the actual item of the barcode here. And then a lot of you guys have HP printers, correct? I think this goes, I know it goes for HP printers, but a little thing that I learned a while ago is if you ever print barcodes, if we went to print this on a printer in this direction here, if you actually rotate it 90 degrees, you get crisper lines on here, just the way that the printer prints. So if we are going, if we printed it this way, your printer is going to go back and forth this way, right, and print it. And so you don't get as crisp lines. If you rotate it this way, it actually, those lines are a lot crisper. I've seen a lot of times where people have printed barcodes like this and the scanners have a hard time reading them. And if you rotate it 90 degrees on your printer, it makes a huge difference there.
So like we have stretching issues when we turn things like that way, and it makes everything like longer or shorter, depending. So like would that affect the barcode scannability?
You know what, with that 800 printer, the stretching is more pronounced, like big. Like if you were printing these like this big, you probably wouldn't have an issue with that. And there's actually, In our second half of the class, I wasn't going to get into this, but there's actually an output compensation tool within Flexi. So if anybody has this issue, but printers have heat in them, and if you're printing on vinyls and banner material, that heat stretches. So there's a lot of things that can do that. So if you're trying to print, say like a 4-foot by 4-foot box, a lot of times with printers you're going to get maybe 4 foot wide, but over the distance of the printer it might come up 47.75 inches, or it might be longer on there. And there's actually a tool within Flexi where you print a box, you measure it, you put that in there, and it will compensate for those that output distortion on there. It's a pretty cool tool. And with the 800, there's a whole bunch of stuff from 3M that I could give you guys that could really help you out with that. So this was pretty simple. Now we'll get into kind of a more realistic application of QR code here. So we have a tool called auto serialization within Flexi. This tool is really cool. So that same barcode that we just created, most of the time you're not printing one barcode. You may have somebody who came to you and said they need 1,000 barcodes and they're numerically numbered on there. So I'm going to open up a file here. Auto serialization. So this is more realistic application. So somebody comes to you and Snowbird wants to put these tags all over up at the resort for inventory, and they need thousands of these. So what you do is you create the basic sticker here. We did the QR code, and when I did it, I've gone in here and kind of made it fit in this box here. So then if I select everything and go to edit, oops, I always forget where it is. All right, here, it's under arrange and auto serialize. It brings up this box right here. So this is where we're going to tell it everything we want. So we're going to do something smaller. We're going to do 100 of these. We're going to do 10 columns, and then this is my spacing on here. And then this is my data here. So if you actually had, you could do multiple numbers on here. You could have 3 sets of numbers. You could select which ones you want to change here, but what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the number, and then we're going to hit next. And here is where you could come in here and you could manually type in the different numbers or whatever. You could do names, whatever you wanted to do. But the auto serialize button is what we're going to do. So we're going to go numeric, and we want to start at 10100 in increments of 1. And when I hit OK, it pre-fills in these 100 spots for me in numeric order. The other thing you can do is you can import a spreadsheet in here. So what you do, and there's another tool called variable data, and what you do is your spreadsheet you have to save as a tab delineated, I think it's called, or comma delineated. So basically it takes all the data and it puts a comma or what in between it. So you can import that in, and it'll import everything in here for you. Most of the time I use the auto serialize button. And when I hit finish and zoom out here, there's my 100 decals. And if we zoom in here, you'll see we've got 10,100, 10,101, and so on and so forth there. So it makes it super easy. The tricky part, I think, about this one is if we get a little more in depth in here, if I had 54-inch media loaded, what I probably would do is I would come in here and I'd make my artboard 54 inches wide, and then I would come in here, and instead of going to auto serialize this time, I'm just going to go to step and repeat. So this tool would be if you wanted to repeat an object. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one column here. I'm going to put my spacing in here, so if it was 1/4 of an inch, I just go in here and I'm going to go across. That's probably one too many there to fit on my media. So I'm going to go to 8, and then I figure I can get 8 there. So then if I went back to my auto serialize, instead of doing 10 columns, I'm going to do 8 on there. Select that. Go in here, auto serialize. Hit OK, hit finish. And then I know that I'm going to utilize my material when I go to print it there. So auto serialize, that's kind of cool. I like that tool. That can save you a lot of time. So now we're going to get into a more complicated one. And this is a feature that we put in Flexi 21, and this is called variable data. So auto serialize is kind of self-explanatory there. Variable data is we're going to create a sign that has a lot of different variable data in it. So for this example, we're going to go to my variable data. And this time we're doing an 18-inch by 24-inch sign. These are golf signs. We're going to do 18 of these, and each hole is a different sponsor out there. So I picked a bunch of different car manufacturers on there. So each one of these is going to be different. The top's going to be the same, our hole sponsor, Snowbird, but we're going to change the logo, the web address, QR code, and a phone number here. So we want to print 18 of these different signs. So we have variable data. I gotta find it here. I think it's under, there we go. So under File and Variable Data, this is my variable data. Oh wow. It's funky on my laptop, like it doesn't pick the box and move it, but on the screen here it shows it moving. So my variable data toolbar here. So what we're going to do is then we're going to come in here. Oops. I split and put an extra WW in there. And we'll put that in there. We'll come in here. Spread that out. So what we do is we select our data point here, and then up here we're going to convert to variable data. That's another cool thing about Flexi. If you put the mouse over something and hold it for a second, it'll kind of tell you what that does. So we're going to convert to variable data. And I got to go back here and open this up because I forgot what I named them. So I'll show you this here. So under variable data, so we've got all this, but then I've got a spreadsheet, and then I've saved it as a text document here. And so we've got web address, QR code, and phone. And you'll see what I mean here. So what we're going to do is over on Design Central, is we're going to name this web address. So what this does is it's going to map it back to my spreadsheet when we import this data on here. And there's some different things that you can do. So on here, it tells you kind of the size and whatnot. We can scale it to fit this size, so it's going to scale everything to fit within this format, or keep it proportional. There's some different things you can do there. So we need to go ahead and hit the checkbox. Then we're going to come over here, and we're going to name this QR code. We're going to name this one picture, I believe. Picture. And then, I think we called this one phone, but I'm going to name it phone number. We're going to hit OK. So now I've kind of validated all my data points on here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to edit the variable data. So this is kind of where I'm going to import everything here. So I'm going to go to load data file. And we're going to go to all my stuff here, variable data. So here's my file right here. I'm going to open that. And this is kind of what it's mapping it to here. So it recognized web address to web address. We got that right. QR code to QR code. But phone number and picture, it didn't map it to anything. So if I select phone number and go to phone, it's mapping what I call phone number to phone here. And then picture. We're just going to leave blank. So when I hit OK, it took all, I only got 10 signs. I said 18, so I lied. It's just 10. So it's mapping everything I put in my spreadsheet here that I had typed in there, the phone number and everything. And you'll notice picture here. So this is a raster image. This isn't data. You could have put links in the spreadsheet to all your pictures. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. Go to my desktop, and I should have all my pictures right there. So I'm going to select all these, and I'm going to drag and drop them over here. And basically, it's putting the link to those pictures on there. So I'm going to close this, and when I hit OK here, it's hopefully I did everything right and then put everything in here. We're going to see here because we can preview the variable data on here. So you can see if I scroll through these now here over on Design Central, it put all that information in there for you.
Okay. Do these all have to be in specific order to match? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
So that's kind of that's one of the tricky parts, is they have to be in order here. So everything typed in had to kind of line up in here with the spreadsheet.
Okay.
So that's our new variable data tool, and this one you have to kind of get in there and play around with. And is everybody here using Flexi to output? Does anybody have Onyx or Rasterlink or any other RIPs that they're using? Okay. Because this tool actually, to output this, like you can't export these as individual PDFs. So if you wanted to export each one of these 10 into an individual PDF, that's one downfall of this tool, is it doesn't give you that capability. So we would have to hit the print now button and it sends them all over. So that's variable data.
So I wouldn't be able to like make a set of these and save them as a PDF and print them on my Xerox?
No. It's a request that I've put in, so I'm hoping that in later versions of Flexi that that is the possibility there, but unfortunately at this time, no. All right, I kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit there. So this one, how many of you, do you guys still vectorize? Do you get artwork that you're vectorizing? Okay. I'm going to really date myself, but when I first started in this industry, we used to ask for camera-ready artwork, and you would actually get like a very high-quality black and white print of artwork, and then you'd scan it in, and then you'd vectorize it. And so you had to deal with scanners and everything. But now you're going to get like a good bitmap or a JPEG or something. And Flexi's very good at vectorizing. I'm going to open a file here. Let's see what we've got now. I'm going to go to import. And we're going to start with this fish here. So I believe this is a JPEG or a TIFF. we go to our view outlines here. There's no outlines. So this is a raster image, and we want to vectorize this. So I'm going to show you kind of a couple things. I'm going to jump ahead of myself and do print and cut as well. Actually, I'll wait and do print and cut. We'll just do vectorizing here. There's a couple different ways that you can vectorize. We have these tools right here. So we've just got an auto trace, a centerline trace, a color trace, and a picture cut. I've done picture cut before. I don't know how many people would ever use it. I'll show it to you. It's kind of cool. You can take a picture of like a kid or something, and you can do this picture cut, and you can cut it in vinyl, and it kind of makes it look like the picture. So I'll show you it. But there's some other vectorizing tools under the bitmap toolbar here. If you go to vectorize, you see the four that were over there, but then you've got a Bezier, enhanced curves, enhanced corners, centerline, and color. And I'll show you what those are for. My favorite is actually the Bezier tool. So most people will come over here, they'll go to this tool right here. We're just going to drag an outline around what we want to vectorize, and it vectorizes it. So now we've got my vectorized image and my raster image here. So reasons why you'd want to do this, maybe you're going to blow this up, and because obviously if you've got a raster image and you blow it up to 10 feet, it's going to be super pixelated and not look very well. Whereas then we could take this and we could blow this up to however big we wanted, and it's still going to have crisp lines on there. So this outlined it as a bunch of different individual shapes here. So what we could do here is we could come in here to arrange and compound this now to one object there, all vectorized there. So something like this, you probably don't have to do a lot of cleanup because this is kind of a little jaggedy to begin with. So this would probably work for whatever purposes you have on it. So we're going to get into something and edit it. Actually, we'll get into that a little bit later. We're going to open a different file here. So this logo here is just a cityscape. So this isn't the best artwork in the world. But what we can do is I'm going to show you these other effects here. So we go to vectorize here. If we used one of these enhanced curves or enhanced corners, if you have something that you're going to vectorize that has a lot of angles in it, right angles or whatnot, you can go to enhanced corners, and we can actually kind of set the parameters on how we want it to vectorize. So we've got a tolerance for like pixels here. So you can see that if we set this tolerance really low, it's going to really follow those pixels. But maybe we want to set it a little bit higher so that it's going to more straight line through those pixels on there. And then corner detection, you can see if we set these tolerances high, it's going to give us sharper corners or whatnot. The other one is our vectorized and enhanced curves. Oh, vectorize it. Curves. I thought that one had options on it too, but that one's meant more for if you've got a lot of rounded shapes and stuff in there. It's kind of optimized for that. But what we're going to do is I'm going to use the Bezier vectorization tool. When I was in when I took art classes in like elementary school, they would bring out this little plastic tool that had all sorts of curves and everything on it. Those are Bezier curves, and this kind of optimizes in my opinion, this does the best job of vectorizing because it kind of looks at all these curves and everything, and it automatically vectorizes everything for you. So if we come in here, we've got this vectorized here now. Now this isn't the greatest job. You know, we want to blow this up, but we still got a lot of jagged shapes and stuff in here. So we're going to go to our cleanup tools. And there's some tools that are very easy in Flexi. And these are all the cleanup tools we have here. We did a webinar that was an hour and a half just on all these tools. We'll go through some of them. I recommend just getting in here and playing with these. But the first ones I wanted to show you is we've got a convert to shape option in here. So like all these stars, I can come in here and select these stars instead of coming to each individual one and cleaning them up. If we go to arrange and convert to shape, I can come in here and select any of these. So I'm going to go to starburst, and it changes all those to starburst. And then I can come in here, convert to circle, and then I can come in here. Oops, group all these together. So I'm just selecting these, and I'm going to go to arrange and ungroup. Where's my group? Oh, right there. Okay. All right. Sometimes in Flexi you don't know exactly how something is created. This happens a lot in like Illustrator or Corel when you bring something in to Flexi. I'm going to jump away from this just a little bit to kind of show you what I mean here. So if I open this file, this regional supply logo. Eric sent this to me, and their marketing manager created this in Illustrator. There's I don't know how to put this without not being nice, but everybody designs differently. Like in Illustrator and Photoshop, a lot of times people create things and they stack them on top of each other and cover up things and do different things. If you have a sign and graphic mentality from cutting in that, you like having welded objects and stuff. Uh-oh. I don't know what I did there. Where we go. Ah, there, that was an easy fix. So sometimes figuring out, like when people bring you artwork and then you have to manipulate it, it's like a game. When I had my sign shop, I think the hardest thing was taking somebody's artwork and manipulating it to make it work for what we're trying to do. So this is a perfect example here. Like this looks great, and we could probably print this, but if we needed to change something or something on here, if I go to view and show fills, like this is all sorts of funky stuff. There's like thin lines that have outlines on them and different things on there. So this one is like an extreme kind of example of that. But what we're going to do is we're going to come back here to this one. So like I was trying to select these innards and I couldn't do that. So I went to arrange because I thought they were grouped, but it doesn't show that they were grouped. Now my computer's going to think. So it didn't show that they were grouped because I was going to ungroup them. So it's like, well, how do I ungroup these now? Anything within Flexi, if you select it and right-click on it, down here it's going to tell you what type of effects are on there. So this was compounded. So if I come in here and uncompound these, then I can go and manipulate these. So now I can come in here, I'm just holding the shift key and selecting all these inner windows here. And then I'm going to go to arrange and convert And then we've got other tools in here, so you can go to arrange, convert to fan. So it's easy if you can, if there's shapes, but it's not always shapes. So like this building here, maybe we want to change some of these angles or this arc up here. So that's where all these other tools come into play here. These are all my vectorization tools. So like I said, these sometimes take a little bit getting used to. Everything does something a little different. You can add and remove points on here. We're going to select an object and come back here. So some of these are just going to draw a straight line. So if we needed to create a straight line here, we could do that. If we wanted to optimize by curves, we could do that here. And you can take these different curves, and once we hit the check mark here, it'll put those curves on there. On this one, we're probably going to do more angles on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select 2 points on there, and a lot of times it's going to create an angle between those 2 points based on the line right there. There's some tools over here that will straighten horizontal and vertical lines. So this one, we can kind of see that it's not horizontal there. Oops, that's not what we wanted. On that one, what we want to do, I believe, is we use this tool, select those 2 points, and then if we go to It's been a while since I've been in here and used these different tools. So you see you've got all those different ones. That cleaver tool, you can chop something in half here. And the cleaver and the scissors are different, and then that cleaver tool will take an object and split it and close those paths. If I go back and use the scissor tool, it does the same thing, but it doesn't close those paths. So it leaves 2 open objects on there. So there's all sorts of tools in there. If you go to our YouTube channel, like I said, we did a webinar that goes through every single one of those tools. It's a little over an hour long. It's really good, and it goes through all of those different tools on there. So that's vectorizing. I'm going to kind of jump into print and cut. Do you guys do a lot of print and cut? This is what Flexi is really kind of known for, is our print and cut workflow and creating that cut contour. There's a couple cool tools that not a lot of people know about. So if we had something, we're going to open this regional supply logo. I'm going to zoom out. So if somebody came into us and they wanted a print and cut decal here, this is really simple because this is all vector artwork. If I just select this, go to Effects and Contour Cut, it brings up my contour cut options here. I can set this 1/4 of an inch away. I could actually do this -0.125 and do like an 1/8 of an inch bleed on there if I wanted to. I'm going to leave it at 1/4 of an inch just so that you can kind of see it there. But that makes my cut contour line super easy. It's a vector shape. There's really nothing to that. Does anybody do perf cut? Does anybody have a graph tech? Or so if we wanted to do a perf cut, all we have to do here is go to Effects and Contour Cut again. And the difference is we have to open up here. And when we do a contour cut, we're creating a contour cut. It's already kind of done. It calls it cut contour, but we're going to do perf cut contour so that we have a second perf cut here. And maybe we want to do this as a rectangle. So then I hit OK there. And I'm going to move this just so that you can see it here. But now we've got my kiss cut here and then my perf cut. So when I bring this into Production Manager, I can then actually tell it my cut contour, I want a kiss cut, and my perf cut, I'm going to do my perf cut. And then you can change all your parameters there. So that's pretty easy. Vector graphics are super easy to do that. But raster images are the tricky ones to do cut contours on.
So we have an old HP latex, but then we also run just a plot cutter separate. So we would have to print on the HP, bring it over.
Yes.
So on that, I still need to learn you have to set up areas so the cutter can see that and cut around what's printed.
Yes. Yes, so you're going to put registration marks in there so
Okay.
that it reads that. Are you guys staying for the second part of the class?
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll get into that, actually outputting it, setting up all those. Yeah, it's pretty easy. How many people are staying for the second half of the class?
We're interested now, so we may stay if it's possible.
Okay. I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I'll talk to them in between.
Yeah, so we'll go on to more output there. It's pretty easy. We'll go for another little bit here, and then we've got some question time that we could get into that. So now we're going to do a raster image. So if I come in here, right there. So I've got this bottle. This is a raster image on here. So if I went to Effects and Contour Cut in here and I tried to do an outline or contour, it just puts a box around that whole image there. That's not what we want. We want to put a cut line around this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a transparent background on this image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background color here of my artboard. So you can see this file. It's not just the bottle, it's this whole square. So if I come into my bitmap editing toolbar, there it is. I lost it earlier. All right. So this is my bitmap editing toolbar. These are like my Photoshop tools. I'll show you what these other tools are, but I'm going to show you this one first. This is our Make Transparent magic wand, I call it. If I select that and select this white area, you can see it's kind of selecting the bottle here. You can do this with images that have noise in the background, maybe a color or something, and you can mess around with your tolerance. It's real easy if you have a white background or a solid colored background. But you'll see when I click my check mark here, it kind of knocks out that background. And now if I go to, I did the background here to show you how it does that. I'm going to change this back to transparent. But if I go now to Effects and Contour Cut, you can see it puts it around that image, and it does it based on that transparent background that it created. So now if I hit apply there, that was weird. Let's see here, Effects and Contour Cut. Sure why it was like knocking out the bottle there. So again, what I did there, I probably should have explained that. So I wasn't sure exactly what happened there. I think might have been something funky with that. So what I did here is I right-clicked on it and just separated that contour cut so that I could select the contour and the bottle there. So now if I sent this over, I've got a nice print and cut file there. So, and then again, Flexi will recognize anything here. So we'll, that might have been, I know why I did that. So if we had this here, so if we had vector graphics here as well, on here, if I selected both of these now and went to contour cut, it's going to put it around my vector graphics as well. If we wanted a little cut line in here, we can select with holes, and it's going to put that in there as well. And then sometimes, like with that little spot right there, what you could do is you could just kind of manipulate this outline until you get rid of it, or you could, there's a bunch of different ways you could have gotten rid of that. Once you applied it here, if you select that and right-click and go to separate contour cut, then you can select just your contour cut, and then maybe you want to uncompound that, and then you could delete anything you didn't want in there with that. And then the cool thing again about Flexi, if the customer came in and they don't like the way that was slanted on there, I can right-click, go to select within, I can select my text there, and I can manipulate that. Yeah. Didn't do it because if you remembered when I right-clicked and broke apart that cut line from it, it then undid it as a smart object. So if I hadn't have done that, it would have rotated the contour cut line there as well. So that's that. As far as print and cut, this one seems to be very popular. This one's kind of cool. I like this feature. It's where we're going to control the cut order. Have you guys ever created something and it had multiple objects on it, and you printed it, and then you went to cut it, and it started cutting up here, and then it scrolled all the vinyl out, and then it cut down here, and then it scrolled it back, and it's jumping all over the place. The reason that it does that is if it cuts an order of how you design. So if I put this here and put all these different objects here, it's going to cut in the order I designed everything. So this is going to jump all around all over the place. If I come in here to arrange and cut order, it's going to, there's two options here. If we click on preview, it's going to show you a preview of how it's going to cut before we send it over. And you can speed that up and slow it down here. But what we want to do is we want to rearrange that. So if I go to cut order and reorder, it shows me it's going to go 1, 2, it's going to jump all over the place. So we could, you can automate it, or you can actually come in here and you can say, I want to cut this, 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 this. So we can kind of rearrange everything here in the order we want to do. So if I click OK here now if I go to arrange and cut order and go to preview, you can see it kind of makes more sense here. And this is actually going to help too, because if your cutter's going back and forth like this, you get more chance of skewing on there. So that's kind of a cool feature in Flexi, and I believe this is in This is in like 19, 21, and 22, so this should be available to everybody out there. What else do we have? Did I go through everything here?
Does it depend on just when the object was created or the last time it was moved? So if I create something and move it, create something else and move it, and grab an old object and move it, does it reorder it? Like, well, now I think this is 3 instead of the last one.
Yeah, that's a good question. We can, let's figure that out here. I've never been asked that one. So we'll just create 4 boxes. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I go to arrange, cut order, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I wonder if we move that. I might not have done that correctly there. So I wonder, so let's do this. So we'll move 1. If I move 1, arrange, cut order. I think it's in the when it's actually put onto the screen there. So I think so when it's actually created, not when it's moved around on there. That was a good question, though. So we'll jump in here too. This is another feature that I find super helpful in Flexi. And this has probably never happened to you guys, but somebody's probably never come in and given you like a GIF on their website and said, can you blow this up and put it on the side of my truck? So there's not a ton that we can do. Like you can't take that file and just bump up the resolution. If it's 300 DPI, you can't change it to 1200 and it's gonna make it better. If it's small like that, no matter what resolution, you're gonna get some pixelation when you blow it up, but there is a tool in Flexi that can kind of help that. So I'm gonna, let me open this file here. Take me a second to find it. It's kind of buried in here. There it is. So this image is 4 inches by 7 inches, and if we zoom in here, we can see that this is pretty pixelated. So if we blow this up in really any size, it's going to look horrible and pixelated on there. There's kind of a trick we can do in Flexi here. If we go to this bitmap editing toolbar and go to this resample right here, what we're going to do is we're going to take all these pixels and we're going to kind of blur them and smooth them out. So it's not making it higher resolution. It's kind of tricking the eye a little bit here. So a good rule of thumb is to take whatever pixels it is and times it by 4. When I hit OK here, it kind of blurs all those pixels together there. So then you could get away, you could blow this up now and it's not going to have that hard pixelization in there. So if we do the undo button here, this is what originally it looked like. And then if I redo that, you can see that you can kind of get away with it here and make it a little bit better on there. I would hope, I haven't had a sign shop in a while, but I hope people are better about getting better artwork to you. I come from the days of camera-ready artwork and everybody bringing in little tiny, it sounds like people still do this all the time.
Screenshots off their phone.
Yeah.
Screenshots, those were the best.
I got a quick question. How can you move Flexi from one computer to the other? Like you're trying to get rid of the computer and you want to move the files?
That's actually a good question, and we went through this earlier today here. You can. So that Flexi used to have a dongle, and you could move that dongle. And so our new licensing is really the same thing, but we don't have a physical dongle. And what you can do is you can move it 6 times. We allow you to do that yourself 6 times. So what it's meant for is like, if, heaven forbid, your shop burns down or somebody steals your laptop, you can unlicense that from your laptop and you can put it on a new computer. So we give you 6 times that you can do that. After 6 times, you have to contact us and we can re-release the license. But what you do is I'm going to jump on my account here. So you go to saicloud.com and log into your account. I've got 12 pages of licenses here, but you're most likely going to have one on here. So I'm going to go to my Flexi 22, which I think is on this page. So right here, and there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to show you 2 ways. This would be the case where you don't have access to that computer anymore. You've lost your laptop, it burned or it completely crashed and you don't have access to it. If you click on it right here, this right here, if you click on license removed, it's going to remove the license from that computer. So now, if I went to my new computer and went to saicloud.com, you're going to hit download now and you can download and install it there. And what it's going to do is, at the end of the installation, it's going to ask you for this activation code and it'll license it on that computer.
Can you switch it, you said only 6 times?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can't have it on more than one computer?
Well, you could. So you could have Flexi loaded on this computer and this computer, and then what you can do, there's another way you can do it. So if you go here to start, and then come down to SAI Production Suite, and under License Manager, I believe. So this is this is on the computer that you have Flexi on. What you can do is you can remove license from this computer, and then you, as soon as I click remove license from this computer, it's going to change from remove license from this computer to license this computer. So you would click this, and then you go to your other computer, go in here to that license manager, and you'll see that it then says license this computer. And you click that, and then you're going to have to paste that activation code in, and it would allow you to then license that computer.
But only one at a time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And only 6 times.
And only
Yes.
6 times? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm really hoping, and I probably shouldn't say this, but there's a thing called a floating license that I'm hoping would really approve here soon, where you could have Flexi on your computer at work and at home, and it will, the server will be smart enough that it'll know that you're running this version, and if you don't have Flexi on this computer, it'll allow you to open it here, because it's smart enough to know there's only one instance of it, so that hopefully that's coming down
I'm the only
the
one
line.
that uses it, but in my whole company, so it would be nice if I could use it on the laptop as well as my desktop at the same time.
Yeah, so you can do this. We sell Flexi several different ways. You can own it, like you own the license to use it, or you can own it outright. And so like if you bought Flexi 19 and you purchased it, you have Flexi 19. We also have a subscription-based service where you pay monthly for it. And if you started on 19, when we come out with 22, you get that at no cost. There's no upgrade fees or anything. And so if you have the subscription version of it, if we go into, if we were to purchase it, we have what we call Flexi, which is design, cutting, and printing. Then we have Flexi Design, which is half the cost. Flexi Design is $29.99 a month. Flexi is $64.99 a month. Flexi is just, this one right here for $29 is just the design side of Flexi. So if I had that subscription and I went to hit print, it doesn't have Production Manager, so you can't output.
So no rich software included then?
Correct. It's just the design, but that's a way that you could have Flexi on multiple computers without paying for everything. The other cool thing about this is, like you guys with your traffic shop, if you had 3 designers, if you're on the same network and you have, if you do that Flexi design, when you hit print, it'll say, there isn't a production manager with this license. Do you want to direct it to a production manager on the network? So then you can direct it to your $64.99 subscription and use that production manager, and then that Flexi design functions as a full version, but it's borrowing production manager.
Oh, yeah, makes it cheaper if you're getting multiple
Yeah.
stations and whatnot.
Yeah, so if you work for a company, I mean, you could maybe talk them into getting you a design subscription to put on your laptop or something. That works out well, and it's not the $64.99, so that works out.
How do you tell what sort of, if you have the subscription or if they bought it outright? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because obviously I didn't do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it says, I think it'll tell you here. If you go to, well, I mean, even, so you could do a subscription, you could have an outright purchased one and a subscription, they still work together. So regardless of what you have, you still could get a Flexi design subscription. And then if you're at home, you could just save it as a PDF, an EPS, or a .fs file, whatever you wanted to do on there. That was a good question. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So like we have a printer on one computer and then a cutter on another computer. Yeah, so like maybe that happened.
No, keep on going.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
I was just like wondering if there was like a subscription or something that would like account for both of that, because like if you wanted to do the cutting capabilities that Flexi has, but like I have the subscription on my printer computer, how would that work out?
Yeah, so you've got a cutter on one computer and a printer on another
So we
computer?
use, yeah, so what we use is we still use the program manager, but we use Cutting Master instead. And then the other printer will run the 22. And
Yeah.
it does that, so it just runs that way. But we also are using a GraphTech 8600, so
Okay.
it doesn't communicate as well, it's just USB port. So I've been told too, if we get a newer printer, it can do all this together through Bluetooth and actually do the contour cutting and all that together with the printing and setup. It's just we'd have to upgrade the actual plotter. I
Yes.
think is what I was told.
Yeah, so I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think the 8600 had a network port on it. So if you did, instead of USB, if you did it network, then it would be shared over the network. And then you could use Production Manager on this computer.
And then you just have the different tabs, right?
Yeah, so when you set it up, so like my GraphTech here, instead of USB, if you set it,
Hold on, track on
here, right here, then it has an IP address and then you can communicate to it. Yeah. And then, you know what, the guys at Regional, the tech guys could probably help you out with that.
Yeah, I'll look at this, didn't even realize that was an option to do it that way.
Yeah, because this way, so like typically, like the latex printers have that IP address, and so it doesn't have to be connected to the computer it's on, just on that network, and then you can send it from wherever it is. And then that GraphTech software, that's Flexi as well. We make that for GraphTech, so it would work just the same.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, very helpful.
The other stuff that I show is all kind of color management and on with the next part of our class. Nobody has white or UV printers. There's stuff you can do there.